Our analytics say that these rookies could be huge sleepers in your Dynasty leagues. Last year on this video, really the only guy we hit on was Tyron Tracy, but hitting on a sleeper, especially an analytical sleeper like that, is not a bad thing. And so we're trying to find which guys are maybe being underdrafted or undervalued by your Dynasty league mates so that we could, pick them up off of waivers, add them to our taxi squads, things like that, to maybe get a hit or two in there. So make sure you drop a like and subscribe if you enjoy the Dynasty content. But the first guy we're going to talk about is probably the most mind-boggling pick of the draft. Somewhere, I bet we can have this. Let's have our reaction from this pick. I don't know if I think we were probably just like, well, it's cool. Isaac Tesla. Let's go ahead and look at Detroit, who they traded up for. And they traded. Wow.
Tesla.
They traded for Isaac. Yeah, interesting.
Okay.
We didn't even really know how to say his name until right before we recorded this video. I actually just was practicing it right before we hit play. But I do know about him because I was reading a lot of, actually Reception Perception had a write-up on Isaac Tesla before the draft. It was one of the last ones he did. And so I read that right before the draft. And you're looking at that. And it's a mixed bag, right? I think there's a lot of work to be done when you're looking at his route running at Arkansas. The dude played most of his snaps in the slot. And so the first thing that pops out, and the most obvious thing for why Isaac Tesla is not going to hit in the NFL or hit from a fantasy perspective or hit at all, is because he's like the fifth option on the Lions. Now, a lot of people have talked about the trade that the Lions actually made to move up and get him and pointed out that they gave up, I think people have said what's equivalent to 2 or 3 third-round picks to get up and get Isaac Tesla. And so looking at his reception perception success rates, though, 35th in man coverage, 35th percentile, I should say, 62nd percentile in zone, and then 15th percentile in press coverage. And so, again, 70% in the slot in terms of his alignment percentages. And you look at that and you're like, okay, well, the Lions have Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the most dominant slot wide receivers in the NFL. He's top 10 in slot snaps every single year. And so schematically, there's really no way it will work. Not to mention, he's going to be getting targets behind a multitude of guys, including but not limited to Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, and probably David Montgomery as well. And so from an opportunity standpoint, yes, it makes it very unlikely that he's going to do anything. It's just interesting that the Lions were so aggressive to jump up and get this guy. A guy that when you're looking at his analytical profile in the bakery really doesn't grade out that bad. I mean, we're drafting Kyle Williams, who's right ahead of him, pretty early. We're drafting guys below him, Jalen Knoll in the 2nd round. We're drafting guys like Alec Iomanner in the 3rd, 4th round. Jack Besh is below him by quite a bit analytically, and he's going in the 2nd round. And this is why analytics aren't everything. You have to balance your approach to evaluating rookie prospects. But he's really interesting in the sense that, when you're looking at the type of prospect he is in the bakery, his build and his type and his build, because he really, again, from an alignment standpoint, he is more of a slot wide receiver. And so his type registers as a slot because he did play most of that in college. But his build is like an X. So he's a slot wide receiver because he's built like an X. He's 6'4", I think 215, built like a prototypical X. But also, from a separator standpoint, in terms of earning targets, gets the poor earner label in the bakery, and that puts him in a category, really, he's the only poor earner I've seen that's been a slot proto X, but I knew looking at that, I'm like, there really are no wide receivers built like him. Athletically, he's a freak, right? His RAS was a 9.97. I mean, that is elite. Elite speed. He ran a 4.44 at the combine. Elite vertical, 40 inches. Elite broad jump. I mean, for his size, again, his height adjusted size speed, I guarantee that's one of the things that's pushing his score up in the bakery here, which it's a 9 out of 10. So again, his bakery is not that bad, but when you're looking at the guys that have that slot type alignment percentage in college that come in that have the build of a prototypical X, so those huge slots. There are 4 of them, and all of them sucked for the most part. You'll remember one of them, Terrence Marshall, who came out of LSU, went to the Carolina Panthers, had some opportunity actually, and did have a bet. He was a tier above Tesla in terms of their analytical grades, but didn't do anything in the NFL. And so again, from an opportunity standpoint alone, you have to look at this and be like, okay, the only way that he's probably going to get serious opportunity is if they either make him a feature part of that offense, which wouldn't make a ton of sense to me at all, or unless injuries happen. And I think that's kind of why you'd grab him. You grab him because of the team investment. You grab him because he's completely free. He's not really getting drafted, so you can get him off of waivers. You can put him on your taxi squad. And you grab him because the analytical profile, like I said, is that of some of the guys that are going around him are being drafted in the second, third round in these dynasty drafts. And so he has a good analytical profile. He has a pretty good prospect profile altogether, and he has a lot of team investment. Again, there are tons of red flags, tons of hurdles. This is a very deep sleeper pick, but I think if you can get him off of waivers, don't spend a whole lot on him if you're doing bidding for sure, but put him on your taxi squad. He's definitely worth picking up, and I'm definitely just going to let him sit on my rosters, especially, like I said, if I don't have to invest anything into him. I think he's a decent shot in the dark.
Yeah, I think the same thing is going to apply to Chimere DK. The difference is that's a pretty wide open wide receiver room beyond your number one guy in that offense, which is Calvin Ridley at the wide receiver position. In contrast to Tesla, who basically has to compete with the receiving capabilities of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, and Jahmyr Gibbs. You have DK, who's in a room where the depth chart, I had to pull it up because I don't even know everyone who's there. You've got Ridley and Lockett. Burks, you could include Burks in there, I guess, in the discussion, but Burks at this point is irrelevant. And then Van Jefferson being the next best guy as well. They obviously take 2 day 3 wide receivers and then get Restrepo as an undrafted free agent, which, everybody's drafting Restrepo because of that as an undrafted free agent. But DK is the guy that actually got like the first overall pick on day 3 draft capital. He was like the 401 to the Tennessee Titans. And he was really ultimately at Florida, he was a deep threat. He was a field stretcher. And that was definitely proven with his 40-yard dash. He ran a 4.34 at the NFL Combine. His RAS, again, was really, really solid. 9.80 was his RAS score. So pretty solid athlete, honestly. His size-wise, he's not really going to blow you away. That was the biggest knock on his score. He's like 196 and I think 6 foot or something like that. So he's not like giant or anything, but it's nothing to be worried about. With DK, this is one where you want to balance the vacated volume fallacy versus like the reality that they are bringing in the number 1 overall pick in Cam Ward, who is going to be not very difficult, leaps and bounds better than Will Levis. And when you're looking at that wide receiver room, you're like, okay, Calvin Ridley last year with Will Levis at the helm and Mason Rudolph was still a wide receiver too. When he was on the field, he was a borderline wide receiver too. He had 120 targets, 64 receptions, over 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns. He had 4 touchdowns less than he did in 2023 in Jacksonville, but pretty much the exact same production as he did the year before. That much production in that offense. Now you apply that to what Cam Ward is able to provide in that offense, you probably have room for a couple of other guys in that offense to make some noise. Obviously, the second most productive wide receiver in that room last year was Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. And he's no longer in that room. So I can't lie. This is one that's very intriguing to me because number 1, you're looking at his bakery score, and he's right there by Tesla and Jalen Noel, Jalen Royals, right in that tier, just behind Kyle Williams, Ty Felton, just ahead of Torrey Horton, Ellick, and Jack Besh. Mainly because of that 40 time in draft capital that we didn't expect to be as high as it was or ended up being, and also the fact that this is prime hype time. We are getting into prime hype time in the summer during minicamp and during training camp in July and August, where you start seeing these clips of these new quarterbacks in these new rooms that are throwing dots all over the field to all of these new guys that are in that wide receiver room that looks completely different than it has in the past. Once Cam Ward throws a ball to DK in training camp, his stock's going to go up. And yeah, the same thing's probably going to apply to Restrepo because there's that pre-established connection in college, though that's don't take a shot on Restrepo. We've already seen that happen. But DK's the guy that, from a draft capital investment perspective, guys, Restrepo might not make the team, number 1. DK, unless he's the next freaking who was that guy that was drafted in the 4th round a few years ago that didn't make the team? It was Washington. Ironically, he went to Tennessee.
I don't remember.
It was
too much of a deep pull for me. I can't do it.
It was a guy that was kind of a big name, and then he didn't make the team. But anyways, all that to say, keep an eye on DK, and you can get him borderline undrafted. If not, take a shot on him in the 4th round. Totally cool with that in your rookie drafts, and you have a pretty good chance at getting a value win, and that's what we care about the most in Dynasty. We're not going to call shots and say this guy's going to hit and be elite and he's going to be the next Puka Nacua, the next day 3 wide receiver to go nuts and be the number 1 option for Cam Ward. I'm not betting on that for DK, to be completely honest. I'm betting on the hype. I'm betting on the value win come training camp time in 2 months.
See, now we can move into actually some sleepers that I think from an analytical standpoint in terms of their hit rates in Dynasty actually make some mathematical sense. Because when you're looking at like, okay, strategically in Dynasty, which positions do you want to target with bad draft capital? Running back is definitely one of them, right? Because really with running backs, especially in a very volatile room, especially on a team that's considered a rebuild in the NFL, you're going to want to have every back. If they spent a draft pick on a back, you're going to want to have that back. And so let's dip into the Tennessee Titans running back room where you have Tony Pollard, who is aging, who was good last year, but not great. And you have Tyjae Spears. Tyjae Spears, I mean, I will say comfortably right now that he has that room pretty much on lock. But when you're looking at Tyjae from a fantasy perspective, I think everybody has kind of overestimated what he was going to do each year he's been in the NFL, right? 17 games in his first year was the running back 34. 12 games last year, and he had 113 points total. But again, it was averaging 3.7 yards per carry. Again, bad situation. Totally understand that. But this is one of the more open running back rooms there is. Not to mention, Tyjae is missing an ACL, and not really. Really, the argument there is he missed time with injuries last year, including a concussion. And Tony Pollard, as we know, has also missed time with injuries pretty consistently. And so it's about warm bodies that could get carries, and one of those warm bodies is Khalil Mullings. He went in the 6th round. And again, when you're looking at guys like in the bakery historically that have gone in the 6th round and comparing them, actually, Devin Neal is the 2nd highest rated 6th round running back, and we're going to talk about him on this video as well. And then Khalil Mullings is actually the 6th highest rated 6th round running back ever, and that's out of 30 players. So they're both in that top tier of 6th round guys. I say that to say, there are some other guys, Taj Brooks and Ollie Gordon, both who are relevant right now, and especially like later in free agency dynasty rookie drafts. They're actually a tier and 2 tiers lower than these guys. Khalil Mullings, though, is getting less love from what I've seen than Ollie Gordon and Taj Brooks, particularly because of the situation. But in reality, I think, especially when you're comparing Taj Brooks and Khalil Mullings has a much better analytical profile. And from an opportunity standpoint, yes, situationally, Taj Brooks goes into a Bengals offense that's just scoring fantasy points left and right. But I don't think Taj Brooks sees the field any sooner than Khalil Mullings does in the Tennessee Titans offense, just because of the fact that Taj Brooks didn't get enough team investment to overtake Chase Brown. Not to mention they did bring back Zach Moss, and they brought him back on a very little deal. But it doesn't mean that Zach Moss and Taj Brooks have about the same amount of team investment, and so he's going to have to beat Zach Moss out. Zach Moss was decent last time we saw him for his full season. So I say that to make this point. Mullings is somebody you should roster / pick up in free agency because he's in a very volatile running back room from an injury standpoint and a situational standpoint. And because, again, from an analytical perspective, he really doesn't grade out all that bad. Now, you really didn't see much athletic testing data for Mullings because, spoiler alert, he's not super athletic. He really isn't. But at the same time, he, from a production standpoint, I mean, his film was really good in my opinion. I loved watching him play at Michigan. I think he's a good back, and for the fact that he did get drafted here, I think is a good sign for him. It's just a matter of stacking those. Really, I think we've got some other good examples of this that we'll mention, but the guys that got drafted that are going to be in rooms that don't have a clear alpha, clear number 2 in terms of the running back position, a clear bell cow, that could potentially see the field and get value increases. And I think from a strategy standpoint, running back is probably the best position to do that at in Dynasty. And so that's why I think from Khalil Mullings' standpoint, I think he's a great player. I think he was good in college. I think he could get opportunity. I think he could get carries. And I want him on my team for that reason. He's being valued a lot less than, he's in the same tier analytically as Devin Neal, Jaden Blue, Dylan Sampson, Jordan James, and Jarquez Hunter. All of the guys that are in that tier with him are being drafted ahead of him by a pretty significant amount right now. So
yeah, you mentioned a warm body getting carries. I mean, he's a big body getting carries, and that's what Tennessee lacks right now. Like when you're in a goal line situation or a short yardage situation, are you really super excited about getting the ball to Tony Pollard or Tyjae Spears, either one of them?
No.
Not necessarily. And Khalil Mullings is a guy that if he can work his way up the depth chart, then he has a good chance to get those opportunities more consistently in that room this season. So Devin Neal, I think, is another guy that he's a deep sleeper at this point because everyone knows his name, but everyone just decided to forget his name when he got the draft capital, the low-end draft capital that we kind of expected. We said high-end, late day 2, like late 3rd round, low-end 5th, 6th round. And where does he go? He goes pretty much at the very low end of where we thought that he could go. And that was the 6th round. He's drafted to be the backup. Yes, the backup to Alvin Kamara. I think at this point, Devin Neal, technically he'll have to like earn his share and earn his way over Kendre Miller in that offense. But that's not going to be difficult because Kendre Miller can't even step on the field without injuring any part of his body. Kendre Miller is certified injury prone.
And they hate him.
And they absolutely
well,
hate him.
I guess
I mean,
he's not
Dennis
there
Allen
anymore,
hated
but,
him.
yeah, right.
But now it's a whole different coaching regime. Like Kellen Moore, I'm sure had a hand in them selecting Devin Neal, which is more investment and more care than what they have right now in Kendre Miller. So I think Kendre Miller at this point is a non-factor. You can come back and dunk on me if I'm wrong with that. But I mean, Devin Neal, from a prospect perspective, we know exactly what he is. He's very well-rounded. He's very smart. He's not going to blow you away athletically, but he does everything right and he does everything well. How will that translate to the NFL level? Anyone's guess. Your guess is as good as mine. Analytics tell you that he is the second best graded 6th-round draft capital running back ever in the bakery since dating back to 2017. So that's already a very good sign. If you want to take a guided dart throw on a late day 3 guy, Devin Neal is going to be your guy. Jarquez Hunter being drafted mid-3rd round right now because of the shakiness of that running back room long-term. Are they going to re-sign Kyron Williams? Are they not going to? Jordan James, same sort of situation, going 3rd round, as he should be. Dylan Sampson going 3rd round, as he should be. Jaden Blue going late 2nd round as a 5th-round running back in a room that is wide open in Dallas. He deserves to go that high. And poor little Devin Neal, who's the backup to Alvin Kamara, who's pushing 30 years old, is for whatever reason going in the early to mid 4th. Like, he really should be going in the same range as those other guys. Analytically, he has just as good a shot. From a prospect profile perspective, he has just as good a shot. He's on the lower end from a draft capital perspective. But again, it all kind of ends up coming out in the wash when you've got some of these guys like Jarquez Hunter going relatively close to where Devin Neal did in the draft. Dylan Sampson goes like 4th round. I understand why you want to take him over a guy like Devin Neal. Totally understand that. But again, I care at this point when we're talking about sleepers. We're going to start taking these analytical shots. And when you have a guy that you already liked in the pre-draft process, who didn't really take that much of a hit in the post-draft process because of his draft capital and his landing spot, it's like, okay, he basically just ended up going on the lower end than where we expected him to go. And that means that you can potentially get a really good value out of him. I'm telling you guys, if Alvin Kamara goes down with injury, then he is the next man up. And that's what you want to take a shot on with these sleeper running backs. And you're going to see, I guarantee you're going to see a ton of training camp hype. You did with Kendre Miller when he came into the NFL draft. And no, it didn't amount to anything, but there was an opportunity where you could sell him high because of that hype, right? So keep that in mind with Devin Neal heading into August.
Let's talk about Jalen Lane, who went to the Washington Commanders in the 4th round out of Virginia Tech. Played 4 years at Virginia Tech. So, we're looking at the type of receiver he is. He is a little bit of a smaller guy. He's like 5'10", 190 pounds. So think like a T.Y. Hilton size. But athletically, I mean, he tested really well. The only thing that really brings down his RAS is his composite size grade. Because when you're looking at his explosion grade and his speed grade, he ran a 4.34 at the combine. He is extremely fast. He, again, plays mostly out of the slot. I don't really have any alignment data for him because he's more of an under-the-radar prospect. But situationally, I mean, again, look, if we... Just to clarify, if we had to take sleeper shots, like we're not telling you, hey, since these wide receivers are sleepers, draft them in the 3rd, 4th round, whatever. These are really like more waiver wire guys, if anything. But I will say, we would mostly draft running backs in terms of like our strategy for Dynasty. And so this is, a lot of you guys will say, oh, I'm only drafting running backs. Yeah, no, we're still going to say draft running backs or receivers. But from a situational standpoint, the wide receiver 3 right now, the 3rd wide receiver in Washington is Noah Brown. So I say that, and really, the starting wide receiver 2 right now is Deebo Samuel. And yeah, Deebo will start with the money he got in the trade, etc. But really, Deebo's backup is Luke McCaffrey. Terry's backup is Michael Gallup. And Jalen Lane is listed as the backup to Noah Brown. Noah Brown, again, this is an offense, a dynamic enough offense, an offense that passes the ball enough that Noah Brown actually produced last year, if you'll remember. There were times where Noah Brown actually was somewhat productive. There were random guys in that room who would have good weeks because that's really what happens in good offenses, right? When you're looking at some of the best offenses in the league, a byproduct of that is these random guys that nobody has on their radar just completely popping off, right? And so Jalen Lane goes, and he gets drafted in the 4th. They really don't spend any other, big draft picks on a receiver. They didn't really draft a running back. They use their draft picks for other parts of the teams, which I think was a really good move by the Commanders, by the way. But he goes to a room that, in my opinion, is a little bit wide open. And again, he is that slot type of guy, but he has the speed and the vertical ability, I think, to be dangerous in this Commanders offense, right? And you've seen, a lot of what that offense was successful at last year, even Terry McLaurin, a lot during the season, was down the field shots. They were pretty good at that, as good as any team in the NFL, I would add. And so with Lane, analytically, he's got the analytical profile of a Jack Besh, right? Really, he's got a better analytical profile because the draft capital is 2 rounds difference between them, and they're still valued back to back. And so Jalen Lane, theoretically, with draft capital aside, with the correct draft capital, would be going in the Jalen Noel, Jalen Royals, Chimere DK range. But he's being drafted. Jalen Lane, I don't actually really see drafted. I think he's either going at the end of the 4th or he's a free agent and he's on your waivers. When in reality, from a situational standpoint, he actually. It's actually rare for a wide receiver to go into a situation where you go to a contender that passes the ball a lot with a lot of opportunity. That doesn't happen that often. And Lane's not a bad prospect. He's not a great prospect. Analytically, again, these are why these guys are sleepers, because analytically, there's not a lot here. We're kind of grasping for straws at this point. But he does go to, again, probably the best situation you could where there actually is relevant opportunity. And so Lane, I think, is a good shot in the dark. I think he's somebody that you can just pick up, put him on your taxi squad, and again, try. It's a sleeper. You got to try with some of these guys.
Yeah, and you don't really have to look any further than last year for the San Francisco 49ers to know that anything's possible for anyone that's in that room if they can just seize the moment and take advantage of their opportunity and produce and show some good flashes. And I think this is very possible for Jordan Watkins, who had a decent combine. He ran a 4.38, which really boosted his RAS for sure. The rest of his measurements were okay. His height, weight, his measurables were fine there. His explosion grade was good. But again, his speed grade, going to be elite. And that's the reason that I think they selected him in the 4th round. Something that you're going to want to look at down the line. Again, same tier that we're talking about here with Jalen Lane, right behind Jack Besh, Ellick, those types of guys, Torrey Horton, who are all being consistently drafted. Analytically, I know you're going to be so exhausted with us saying that word this entire video, but this is what we're telling you. Analytically, these guys should be going around the same range where these other assets are being drafted consistently in your Dynasty rookie drafts. You can take these analytical shots that are technically equivalent to those other options for free. You can get them off waivers, right? So with Jordan Watkins, again, look no further than last year where CMC went down for a significant amount of time, like the entire season, and Ayuk missed pretty much the entire season. Ricky Pearsall got shot, missed a ton of the time there, and Jennings comes in and he ends up being super productive. That depth chart isn't super deep. It's not the best depth chart you've ever seen. It's Ricky Pearsall, Brandon Ayuk, and Juwan Jennings. Ricky Pearsall's a big question mark. We don't know what he's going to do. Jennings showed some really good stuff last year, and I think that will continue, honestly. Ayuk, we don't really know when he's going to come back and be full strength from that ACL. And then you have Jacob Cowing, who was drafted last year, who's more of a special teamer. They bring in DeMarcus Robinson from free agency on a very cheap deal. Don't really know how much opportunity he's going to get. There's a lot of question marks in this wide receiver room. And again, when you're looking at that situation in San Francisco, they're getting past the luxury of not having to pay top dollar to a quarterback. And at some point, they are going to have to they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy his dues. And they don't really have anywhere else to go. And what does that mean? That means they're not going to have the luxury to pay a guy like Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel $20 and $30 million respectively on an annual basis. It's why they had to let Deebo Samuel go this offseason anyways, because they also have to pay everyone on the defensive side of the ball as well. So for some of these day 3 shots, like these are starting to matter for San Fran, and they're going to have to start hitting on these guys and get impact players. And if you want to take a shot on Jordan Watkins this year, I can't blame you for that, because there's a lot that's up in the air this year from a health perspective and just depth chart perspective overall in San Francisco in 2025.
And a lot of these guys, again, are going to be only guys that you really can pick up and roster in deep leagues. You're not going to want to get some of these guys in your super shallow leagues because they're not worth a roster spot. But, we play in like start 10, 15 bench spots, 5 taxi spot leagues, and I think there's plenty of room in a lot of our contending rosters where we're cutting these veterans who are done now, where we can pick up some of these guys. Last guy, real quick, Jacory Krosky-Merritt. Went to the Commanders, looking at that depth chart, it's B-Rob, who, it's B-Rob. And then after that, it's Eckler, McNichols, and then Chris Rodriguez Jr. Like, again, I think At this point, he'll be fighting for a roster spot because he was drafted in the 7th round. But from a prospect standpoint, he's really not bad. He's really in the same tier in the bakery as Woody Marks, Raheem Sanders, Ollie Gordon, Damian Martinez. But again, a lot less love than those guys. And so this is just purely a dart throw. He may not even make the roster, but it is one of those things where, again, situationally, not a bad offense, right? He has some draft capital. He doesn't have a ton of competition. And what if he balls out in training camp? Or what if Ja'Cory Cross-Kamara gets second team snaps today? Value one, right? So again, you pick them up for free, put them on your taxi squad. That's pretty much the case with all these guys. So again, if you enjoy the video, make sure you drop a like, make sure you subscribe. If you want to check out all the tools we have, including get a team review from Nathan and I, we can look at your Dynasty team, tell you exactly how you should construct your roster, wow, to make sure that you are ready to win a Dynasty Fantasy Football Championship. You can also get all the resources that we have on the site as well. The rookie prospect database, we have the bakery available for you guys as well. So you can get all that at flockfantasy.com/domain, code domain annual mother flocker tier if you want to take advantage of that. But we appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you later.